friends, what is up and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell from the title of today's video, I did want to wrap my July wrap up and my August TBR in one video. I have not really been reading, but I did read a book that I really loved and I did want to talk about it, but I also wanted to set an August TBR for myself because if you've been kind of here over the last couple months, you'll know that I've been really struggling with reading, and I don't know if it's like the current climate of the world with everything that is happening, if it's like work because I am working insane hours, if it's just finding the time to read. I haven't really looked at it as a way to unwind in a while. So this last book that I did read, I really liked. And the reason why I'm choosing to set an August TBR, if you guys know, I don't really set TBRs, is because I feel like my reading slump needs direction. So I am normally a mood reader. I will just pick up what I want to read, and while that has always worked for me in the past, right now it's really not, and I feel like I need not only a sense of direction but also a sense of responsibility. So these books that I have chosen are books that I am truly so excited to read, that I've been really excited to read and finish. A couple of these I am needing to finish for a while, and I don't know what it is with me right now and not wanting to pick those up, but because I know that I think I'm going to really like these, I think I just need to sit down and have like an active stack of books that if I'm in the mood to read, I will read them, or you know, that will really drive me to want to read. And putting this out there in the universe that this is what you guys are kind of expecting me to read, what I'm sort of expecting me to read, hopefully will spur me to want to read them. So first book that I have to talk about is actually the book that I read for July. I ended up giving this 4 stars. The reason why I gave it 4 stars is not for the plot or anything like that. There are just some sort of like dialogue issues that I had with a little bit of the writing style. This definitely was more on the 4.5 scale for me, but not a 5 necessarily. If I rated it on overall enjoyment, I would have given it a 5. Even though it took me the entire month to read, I actually read this on audiobook, loved it. I loved the dual narrators as well. And that would be When Dimple Met Rishi. So if you guys are familiar, this book has been around for a while, and it took me a while to want to read it. I was actually reading an article on books for Aquarius readers with Aquarius characters from Book Riot. I will list that link down below for you guys if you would like to read the same books that I am currently reading. But I was really excited to read it once I finally started delving into it, because I immediately in many ways identified with Dimple. So the storyline is basically that Dimple is an Indian American and her family is very traditional in the sense of, you know, they'd like her to get married and settle down and be taken care of. Well, Dimple doesn't want to do that. Dimple wants to do the things that she wants to do on her own terms. So she's very into technology. Her dad has diabetes and she decides to go to something called InsomniaCon. And while they are there, they're going to be developing an app, and her app revolves around making checking diabetes and checking in on yourself kind of fun and important. So I thought that was really cool that she was like, I don't necessarily want to do what you guys would like me to do. I kind of just want to do my own thing. And I really appreciated that. So like I said, her family is very traditional, and in comes Rishi. So Rishi also goes to InsomniaCon, which is as I said, a convention. It is a long running convention that they're going to be at. I believe it's like a month and a half, and it is quite expensive. So when Rishi shows up, their first interaction, which I'm pretty sure for a while was all over the internet, people were talking about how rude Dimple was to him and how they couldn't imagine like reacting that way. But basically he shows up and says, "Hello, future wife," or "I am your future husband," or something like that. Because what Dimple doesn't know is Rishi's parents and her parents have kind of set them up. Now, I will say they're not the most like strong parents who are like, this is what you're going to do. And that is reiterated throughout the book, that they were like, oh, just see if something happens. Like, we're not forcing you to do this. Because I also thought that was important, because I feel like oftentimes people think like arranged marriages and things like that are so awful. And I have heard of plenty of people who are like, I'm okay with this. So I did like the perspective of that. Now, the really cool thing about this is obviously Dimple and Rishi kind of get thrown together as you would expect in like a YA contemporary kind of romancy book. So they end up working on the app together, and it was really nice because Dimple, like I said, stresses that she's an Indian American, and she like full on is like, I am an American. I want to live like an American. I want to do what I want to do. And then we have Rishi, who's very much so like, I want to kind of honor my parents and do what they would like. And you get to see that because Dimple is very much so like going on with her dreams and doing what she would like to do. And then Rishi, on the other hand, he kind of gives up what he was doing. He loves comic book art, and you get a little taste of that throughout the book because obviously a little bit of a romance happens. And like I said, Rishi very much so wants to honor his parents' wishes and be more traditional, especially because his younger brother is going the exact opposite, and he feels sort of like their culture has kind of been lost on their family because of that. So he wants to honor them, and I thought that was really admirable. So you get to kind of listen to them kind of interdebate that within their relationship, because obviously once things do start picking up a little bit, Dimple's like, I have to be honest with you, like, I don't know if I ever want to get married, like, I want to pursue what I want to pursue. And then Rishi kind of like has that internal debate with himself and outwardly with her at the same time. So I really liked this book. I thought it was incredibly cute. I love their banter. I love points and aspects of the author's writing style. I think she's very good at painting pictures. Like, as you're reading this book, you can definitely kind of put yourself in the moment and see like the surroundings and kind of what's happening. So I really, really loved it. Definitely a 4.5 star read for me. I believe there is a second one, which I would be interested in reading. I don't know if it follows like the same storyline or the same characters, but I know for me at least that this was such a strong read that I would be interested in reading something else from the author. So that is what I read in the month of July. Really, really happy with it. I think it kind of spurred my wanting to read more and find, you know, like gems that I've been sitting on for a while. But I'm going to go ahead and get into my August TBR. I cannot believe it's already August. You guys, autumn is almost here in Ohio. I know I say that and people are like, oh, we got like a month and a half left, but let's be real, like, the weather's all over the place here. But I'm going to go ahead and get into the books that I'm going to be reading. Some of them do have more of an autumn feel. A lot of them are pretty cozy, and most of these you guys have probably already read. So if you have read these, let me know what you thought of them, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first book I have here is a book that was in my books that I think are going to be 5-star reads. I'll list that up here in the cards for you guys. And that would be Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. I am really excited to read this. If you saw that video, you will know it's because I think that Brandon is such a good writer of characters. I think he's a good writer in general, but I think the first book had such a good setup with the characters that this one is going to be a very good follow-up when it comes to plot and kind of world building, because I did feel like the world building sort of lacked in the first book, but I do also think that that is primarily because he was really trying to build a strong foundation with the characters. So I'm excited to see what I think of this book. I do truly think that I'm going to love it though. If you're not familiar with this series, basically Spencer joins I would call it a military academy that her father used to be a part of. The reason why that's a big deal is because she is actually like excommunicated from the society that they live in, which is basically a planet or asteroid, I'm not 100% sure, which is I'm hoping there's more world building in this, that has excommunicated her family, cannot talk, because her father has betrayed them. He was part of this sort of military group that was protecting them from these aliens that are constantly coming to try to destroy their society. So it's a lot of found family, ragtag team, all that shit that I do like. There's an AI that's semi-sentient in this, and I'm hoping there's a little bit more character development on that as well. But I truly, truly loved the first one. It was my first Brandon Sanderson book I'd ever read. So I'm hoping this one holds up to that and does end up being a 5-star read for me. The next two books I have here, I'm going to kind of consider them a set. I don't know what the second one follows. I know it follows the sister of the main character from the first one, but I'm going to try to go into it as blind as possible. But I have Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and Take a Hint, Danny Brown. This one I've already started reading. I'm like 30 pages into it, 30 or 40 pages into it. It follows our main character, Chloe. She lives with what people would consider like an invisible illness, which I really like the rep for that. I thought that was awesome. Like, so far I'm really impressed with that, because she's not like a super likable character right off the bat, but you get to see that a lot of the time it's because she's in pain. It's because of the way she has to live. But basically something happens to Chloe where she is in a near miss with an automobile while she's walking across the street. Her life kind of flashes before her eyes, and she decides that it's time to live a little. So she makes a list of things that she would like to do that are considered, you know, like before you die, or like the bad list, I think is what she calls it in here. But basically it's like have sex and enjoy it, you know, just things like that. What is the other one? Enjoy a drunken night out, ride a motorcycle, go camping, travel the world with nothing but hand luggage, have meaningless but thoroughly enjoyable sex, and do something bad. Q Red, who is the handyman basically in the apartment complex that she lives in, and they kind of start having like a little bit of a romance. I'm excited to see what I think of this, because they have a very like enemies kind of thing going on. I'm hoping it's enemies to lovers. You guys know I love that. And then obviously I have Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which follows this book. But like I said, I think it's about another sister, like one of her sisters, obviously, Danny. But I don't really know what it's about, but that's okay, because if I like this one, I'll just jump straight into this one and we will see. But light, fluffy, kind of contemporary romance stuff. I'm hoping that keeps me wanting to read. You guys know when I really struggle with wanting to read, I tend to introduce semi-light and fluffy stuff. So we will see if that helps. The next book I have here is a book that I want to finish. I only have like 40 pages left of it, 40 or 50, so this is probably going to be the first one that I finish, and it'd be Underground Railroad. You guys know, if you've been watching or hearing me on Twitter or anything, I have recently been reading this and am really enjoying it, but it is a harder book to read, so I did have to set it aside for a little while. It's very brutal, and I kind of struggle with brutal in general, but especially with brutal where I can really picture it, knowing something like that happens. This book is fantastic. Obviously, it is about the Underground Railroad as told from a historical fiction perspective, but it does have a lot of historical elements to it, obviously because of the genre that it is in. So it is quite accurate. It is just told from a character who didn't exist perspective. So I am really liking it. Cora is a beautiful character. Just listening to the struggles that she goes through would break a lesser person. And I think at points in this book it does break her, but she continues to move past things and continues to try to make a better life for herself. And if you know anything about the Underground Railroad and the emancipation of slaves in the South and the North, it's just a lot, and it's a lot to handle, but I think it's an amazing book so far. And like I said, I only have 40 pages left, and this is definitely sitting already at a 5-star read. So I'll let you guys know what I think of this. But I don't obviously think that that's going to change anytime soon. I think it's going to stay a 5-star read. The next one that I have here follows our main characters, Conrad and Alden. Basically, this is about a convention, and it follows 2 little gay boys, and that makes me very excited to read it. And it'd be Conventionally Yours. I got this in a Bay Crate recently. Like I said, it follows 2 young men, and they are going to a convention together. I believe it is a gaming convention, but they do not like each other, and they get kind of thrown together on the road trip to the convention. And obviously, I'm hoping they kind of have a little bit of an enemies to lovers thing happening. There's a lot of stuff on here that I'm kind of excited about. It says 2 infamous rivals, 1 epic road trip, some uncomfortably tight quarters, why is there only 1 bed, and a journey neither will ever forget. So this comes into a lot of one character kind of breaking down walls within himself to allow other people in, and another character kind of living up to certain expectations that are held for him. So I am really excited to read it. It just looks, I mean, it sounds really cute and something that I am really going to like. The next book that I have here follows our main character, Razia, and this is called Stealing Thunder. Don't know why I couldn't remember the name right off the top of my head. This is another book that I recently got in my Bay Crate, and the reason I'm really excited to read this is it's a fantasy setting with a transgender main character. Basically, Razia leaves her father's kingdom because I'm assuming he's not okay with the fact that she used to be like the crown prince, but really prince is not a gender specific term, just in case you were wondering. But she decides to leave and kind of go out and find her own calling. She does become a thief. She becomes a dancer in one of the bigger cities. Well, something happens and she gets thrown kind of back into the war and taking up her rightful throne. But also she falls in love with this new kingdom's prince. And I'm assuming, or I am hoping, that the transgender aspect of this book will be both important and inspiring. I really, really struggle with books written like that, in a way where the fact that the character is transgender, the fact that the character is gay, or whatever, you know, it may be, the emphasis not like it being just a plot line and not really just like this is how the character is. So I'm hoping this will live up to that. I need a good fantasy book in my life, and I'm hoping this one will tick all of the boxes for me for things that I am currently looking for. So really excited to read this. I'm hoping that this lives up to the expectations that I built for it in my head. And the last 2 books I have here are also more contemporary fluffy romance, but these are of the adult variety. So first one I have here follows our main character Hannah and Jack. Hannah is I guess I'll just tell you what the book is. It's not The Girl You Marry. If you saw, once again, my 5-star prediction video, you will know that this was in here. Basically, Hannah is an event coordinator, an event planner. She's trying to kind of move her way up in the ladder, but her boss doesn't want to let her because she feels like she's cold and aloof and kind of like cut off from everything. So insert Jack. Jack is a writer, but he writes on like fluff pieces like Tinder and dating apps and stuff, but he decides he's going to write an article basically on how to lose a girl. And that is why he decides to also basically in tandem use Hannah. So Hannah's using him, he's using Hannah. I'm assuming they do end up kind of falling in love because they are fake dating, and you guys know I also love that trope a lot. But the reason I was really excited to read this is because Hannah is an independent character. Hannah's already got her shit figured out, and she's basically using this man to kind of step up the corporate ladder. And I actually really like that, because I tend to think that in romance the female characters have some sort of like hold back, and while sometimes they do, or most of the time they do, and I feel like even Hannah kind of does, because I'm assuming she's very aloof and cut off like her boss thinks, but in her mind she doesn't. In her mind she's got it figured out, and she's like, I'm just going to use this guy to get what I want. Really excited, honestly, to kind of experience that. I want to see like a lot of girl power in this book. And Jack just also sounds like a funny character. The fact that he like would prefer to write high profile articles and is forced to write articles basically on Tinder sounds really funny to me. So I'm hoping I like it. I have not really heard anything about this, so I'm hoping it lives up to the hype for me. And the last book I have here follows our main character, Stella Locke and Lane Holder. And this will be Changing Lanes. Once again, you guys know I also talked about this in my 5-star reads, which is why it made it into this video. Stella is out of a divorce, a long-term marriage, and she moves to upstate New York and meets a man and is kind of trying to figure out the dating pool again, how to date, how to find self-worth, things like that. The reason I'm really excited to read this, especially towards the end of August, is because it has more, for me, like of an autumn feel. When I think upstate New York, I think autumn. As somebody who is recently out, you know, like going through a divorce, I think that this would be kind of nice to read and like to relate to. And I think that I'm hoping that Stella and him actually don't end up together. I know that's weird to say, but I'm hoping she's very much so like, I don't need a date. I don't want to date. I just want to be single. I want to figure out life on my own. That would be a different kind of ending than I think most people would expect from this. I'm assuming it's like Lane comes in and saves her, but knowing going into the book that that's how she feels, I'm hoping it's a lot of like finding yourself. So we'll see. If it is that kind of plot point, I'm gonna fucking love it. If it's not, we'll just have to see what I do think of the ending, but I am hopeful for this. Alright guys, so those are the books that I want to read in the month of August and the one book that I read in the month of July. Let me know down below your favorite read of the month. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.